Hello everyone, Ruslan Belov here, and this is our daily rundown of combat operations on the Ukrainian front. So, the Russian army is breaking all records. The past month of July turned out to be the biggest in terms of advances for the entire 26th and 25th years combined. More than 800 square kilometers were taken, and August has also started at a very powerful pace. Several settlements have already been taken, with advances on practically all directions. In the Sloviansk agglomeration, fighting has entered a decisive phase, and the Russian army is also making impressive advances in Kharkiv region. Near Dobropillia, there's a breakthrough toward the city. Today, we'll look at all of this and discuss it. Before we start, make sure you're subscribed to our channel to always stay up to date on the freshest and most relevant events from the front. I give my own perspective on the conflict, sometimes build forecasts, we discuss new technologies at the front and where they might lead, and so on. Well then, let's begin. I'll start today's front overview with the south, the Zaporizhzhia sector. Here, friends, the situation is that a bloody tug-of-war continues. That is, the front line isn't really moving much, but at the same time the Ukrainian side is persistently attempting to push Russian troops south of Zaporizhzhia to disrupt their advance toward Kharkiv and the outskirts of Zaporizhzhia city. And in connection with this, it's throwing Colombian mercenaries into this sector around Stepnohursk. The most elite drone units have been pulled together here. And beyond that, a huge number of foreign mercenaries are being thrown in, Colombians, Finns, even some US citizens as volunteers. And they're trying with all their strength to push Russian fighters out of the southern part of Stepnohursk. But it still hasn't worked for months now. From here today, we received some rather harsh footage of a group of mercenaries moving between dugouts. First they're spotted, and at one point 2 of them are caught right at the entrance to a dugout. The strike is direct and very powerful. The chances of survival for these 2 are essentially none, and it's quite possible the blast wave reached those who were inside as well. Shrapnel and blast waves in enclosed spaces are an extremely dangerous thing. There's little chance of survival in such a case. Now let's move straight to the situation in the city of Sloviansk, where several Russian guided bombs destroyed the only bridge connecting the city across the Kazany Torets River. Interestingly, only half of the bridge span was damaged. Part of it remains intact. Light vehicles can still cross it, but heavy trucks are unlikely to be able to, since its load-bearing capacity has been significantly compromised. I wouldn't be surprised if the remaining part of the bridge is also destroyed within the next day or so. The Ukrainian side is critically dependent on this bridge. It's enough to just glance at the map to understand this is a very important bridge through which supplies flow to key sections of the front. Mykolaiv and the eastern part of Sloviansk, at minimum, hang entirely on this supply line. Of course, once the bridge is destroyed, it will be significantly harder for Ukrainian forces to move cargo across the river. They'll build pontoon bridges, of course, but those aren't as reliable and are easier to destroy. One missile hitting precisely is enough, and the bridge is finished. Clearly, Ukrainian forces will now have to supply this territory through Kramatorsk. That is, from the south there's a single road, and obviously all logistics for this sizable and important section of the front will now go through there. I think Russian FPV operators are already hunting much more intensively over this highway. It's very interesting to see what depriving the Ukrainian army of logistics will lead to. Usually within a few weeks, a grouping left without supply starts having problems, and within a month the problems become critical. It's quite possible this will allow the Russian army to take Mykolaiv much faster and begin fighting for the eastern part of Sloviansk. From the eastern part, it's also convenient to advance on Kramatorsk itself, since the main part of that city is located precisely on the eastern side, whereas for Sloviansk it's the opposite. So as I see it, the Russian army's plan is to use Mykolaiv to gain a foothold in Sloviansk, take its eastern part, build a powerful bridgehead there, and begin attacking the Ukrainian army from the east, from the north, and possibly even from the south. Some such plan clearly suggests itself here. I think during the autumn-winter campaign, we'll in any case see a battle for the remaining cities of Donbass. After those, there are no more large settlements left on Donbass territory. In the Dobropillia area, there's a genuine meat grinder. Ukrainian Azov fighters, one of the most combat-capable groupings on the Ukrainian side, are holding the defense here, but even that isn't helping them hold back Russian attacks toward the city itself. Movement is coming simultaneously from the eastern flank near Anivka and also from the south near Chernihivka and Vodian. The city is being hit daily by a large number of glide bomb and FPV drone strikes and so on. The Ukrainians are dug in solidly there. There are a lot of multi-story buildings to hide in, and simply gaining a foothold in this city is difficult. Regardless, the Russian army is already making such attempts, and while we haven't yet seen objective control footage from there, that's understandable. It's simply not advantageous for the Russian army right now, even if it has a foothold inside the city under control to reveal its own positions. That's only ever done when it won't harm the broader operation, so we likely won't see objective control footage from the settlement of Dobropillia anytime soon, at least from the Russian side. The Ukrainian side, for its part, is also only surfacing footage that's advantageous to it, or at least footage that definitely won't harm the military situation. Now let me add one thought about a possible push toward Dobropillia. Fighting near Torsky has been going on for months, and it was very difficult going for the Russian army here, but literally over the past week, either the Ukrainian army loosened its grip here, or pulled its trained units out to another region, possibly Kharkiv, where they have major problems, because Torsky was taken very quickly and with few clashes. I'm saying this based on what OSINT analysts with contacts among fighters on the ground are reporting. That is, we may see continued movement toward Druzhkivka literally within the next few days. I mean, not just advances in the grey zone, but the taking of one or two settlements standing at the entrance to the city itself. This bridgehead is very important for the Russian army, and it will try with all its strength to push it north and expand it on both sides so that the Ukrainian army can't interfere with supplying this grouping. Today, we received footage of strikes near the settlement of Varvarivka on the T0514 highway. As soon as the Russian army advances a bit further north, FPV operators can immediately reach several more kilometers deeper into the Ukrainian rear. That immediately creates an added edge in pressuring the enemy's logistics, and of course, that works both ways. Now let's move to Kharkiv region, where, as I reported in the first briefing, we got good news that the settlement of Bilyi Kolodiaz has been taken by the Russian army. Now we see the map has been colored in correctly, and the actual situation here has undergone drastic changes. Looking at the Russian army's successes over the past month, I wouldn't be surprised if the Russian command puts this area under special focus and allocates more and more resources here, since the results the Siva grouping is achieving here are simply impressive. We haven't seen results like this in a very long time, and I think August will continue to surprise us. The prospects on this direction are genuinely excellent, and it would be a shame not to take advantage. The terrain here isn't the most favorable for defense, essentially continuous fields without hills. It's about as ideal terrain for an offensive as it gets, and right now Russian strategy and tactics here are producing solid results. By the end of August, I expect this large pocket to be cleared out, and I wouldn't be surprised if Russian troops are already near the settlement of Prikolotny. By the way, you'd probably be quite surprised if you looked at this section of the front on the Ukrainian mapper's deep state. Their map is lagging way behind reality here, and objective control footage has been obtained from many sections of the front, but that apparently no longer means anything to them. In their picture of the world, they're advancing and taking more territory than the Russian army. Well, that happens even in our day and age. To encircle this garrison, which remains fairly large, with an entry point of around 17 kilometers, meaning to close the gap between one bridgehead and the other, about 8 to 9 kilometers need to be covered from one side, and roughly the same distance from the eastern bridgehead. Let's wait together for the end of this saga and watch it unfold online. I talked about the advance in Kazachya Lopan, but I forgot to mention one thing. Right now, the Russian army actually has the ability to strike the city of Kharkiv with glide bombs directly from Su-34s without even reaching the border. It became known yesterday that the Russian army has received new UMPK kits capable of flying up to 150 km/h, and that's simply an enormous range. Let me remind you, Kharkiv is a city of 1 million people, Ukraine's second-largest city, with a huge amount of industry left over from the Soviet era, meaning there are still an enormous number of factory floors there today. So soon, we may see strikes here on key logistics areas as well, bridges, industrial facilities, and so on. There are simply an enormous number of targets here, and the city is essentially within easy reach of Russian aviation. It's even strange that the Russian command has barely touched the city at all. Perhaps there's some understanding that Ukrainian forces don't touch Belgorod in exchange for the Russian army not touching Kharkiv. Although Kharkiv is much bigger than Belgorod and much more important for Ukraine if you count by resources. Strikes on fuel stations, by the way, are being carried out very intensively, and the Ukrainian side has major problems because of them. More than 100 gas stations have been destroyed in the northern part of the country, in Kharkiv and Sumy regions. Real fuel problems have emerged, even though a few weeks ago Ukrainians were laughing that Russians were standing in lines at gas stations because of Ukrainian strikes on refineries. Well, the situation has very quickly repeated itself in Ukraine too. That is, war means strikes don't go in just one direction. It's like in football, they can score goals against you too. Beyond that, gas station prices in Ukraine are approaching €2 per litre of diesel, an enormous price for Ukraine and a major blow to ordinary residents and to agriculture. Also of interest today, Valery Zaluzhny, the former commander-in-chief of the AFU, who led all Ukrainian forces in the first years of the war, stated that Ukraine will never be accepted into NATO, and that NATO, at best, over a 12-year horizon, could reach roughly half the combat capability of the Russian army. That's his opinion, of course, but many experts have serious doubts about NATO's combat capability. If, say, Poland's army individually is certainly combat capable, I'm far from certain that the armies of Western European countries are capable of participating in a war this heavy. Given how brutal this war has been and the losses involved, I doubt Europeans would want to test their own armies under such conditions. Iran-US developments. Also worth noting today, fresh statements from Donald Trump on the US-Iran confrontation. Trump said over the weekend that he had called off a planned wave of strikes on Iran, describing what would have been the biggest attack since World War II, after Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, asked him to give diplomacy another chance. The two countries entered negotiations back in June aimed at a war-ending deal. Those strikes between them have continued since, with the Strait of Hormuz remaining the main flashpoint. Trump said new talks were set to resume Monday and claimed a deal was imminent, describing the expected process as a first phase opening the strait, followed by a second phase covering Iran's full denuclearization. He also called this Tehran's last chance to sign a workable deal. Iran's side, however, has pushed back. A foreign ministry spokesman said there's no immediate plan for direct talks with the US, and that Tehran is only currently engaged with Oman over the Strait of Hormuz, with those talks reportedly close to being finalized. So for now, there's a clear gap between Washington's framing of an imminent breakthrough and Tehran's public denial that direct negotiations are even happening, worth watching closely over the coming days. Thank you very much for your attention. We continue watching the front.